Saturday I felt fine. Sunday I felt terrible. When did you come down? They playing football tonight?
Yes.
Where are they? They're calling for nasty rain
Oh,
tomorrow.
yeah, no, I'm glad they canceled.
to order. It is November 10th, 2022, and the time is 6 p.m. I'd like us all to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, as I said, welcome, board members, and we need to start off with an approval of tonight's agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda. I need a second.
Second.
A second from Mrs. Berg. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we now have an agenda. Dr. Wells?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the board, tonight we want to recognize, which one that is? It's one of ours. Mr. Edgar Fulton Fitzgerald. That's new. All right, I'll try again. Maybe I should stand back here. Mr. Fitzgerald, let me split different. Let's try that. That sounds better. Okay. Mr. Fitzgerald was our school board member and recently passed away in September 17th of 2022. But I have a little background on him from his family who provided this to me, and I'm going to read a little bit of this information for you so you understand a little bit about where he was in the county and what he did for the school system. He attended 2 one-room schools in Amherst County as a child. There was Shady Glen at the Forks of Buffalo, and the second was a 7th grade year at Willow School, just a couple miles from the first. He then attended Pleasant View High School through 11th grade, but then transitioned to Amherst County High School for his senior year in 1946. During his senior year, he drove a school bus to and from school and took kids to and from school his senior year. I know we talk about bus driver situation. I don't think we do that now, but it might solve some of the problems. Soon after high school and marriage, he started the sawmill business, E.F. Fitzgerald Lumber Company. I don't know. So I'll move it back in.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Would it help if you use
I'll come
this
up there and
mic?
try that since it's going to be a long night if that's you say.
I know.
All right. Are we on up there? How about now? There we go. All right. So he started at Fitzgerald Lumber Company, and his sons attended the new Pleasant View Elementary School. Edgar became an active member of the Peddler District Ruralton Club based at Pleasant View School. And he was appointed to the Amherst County School Board in 1963 and served there until 1974. During his service on the board, he was very supportive of the integration of schools. In his later years, he often said he was very proud of the people of Amherst County during those stressful times because of the peaceful transition to integration. It was during those years that Edgar worked to discontinue some remnants of segregation that persisted even after the laws were changed. There were still at least 2 one-room schools in the county during the years of Edgar's service. One of those schools served the Native American ancestry, and one excuse to use to perpetuate the school was that it was too far to send a school bus to transport the children to Amherst. Edgar reportedly said that when he began to push for Amherst to provide transportation and bring those children to the regular schools, a high-ranking school official told him at that time if he persisted, he might not be reappointed to the board, in which Mr. Fitzgerald responded with hesitation. It didn't matter if he was reappointed. It only mattered that the right thing was done. Also during those years, Mr. Fitzgerald worked to get approval for the building of the county school bus garage. He felt that was important for the county, and he also supported the addition to Temperance Elementary School. Edgar's sons, daughters-in-law, 6 grandchildren, and many great-grandchildren have all graduated from Amherst County schools. 2 of Edgar's granddaughters currently teach in Amherst County schools, and Edgar was proud of his service to Amherst County and his community. Again, we want to thank Mr. Fitzgerald for his service and his family. Now his family is here tonight. I'll ask them to come up while Ms. Thompson reads the resolution, presents him with the resolution.
infants, her son, Harrison, and Perkins, and Lyle, their children, and Ronston, her husband, and then Mary Allison Fitzgerald, and her daughter, Tammy. Well, it's nice to have y'all all here tonight. Thank you for coming to honoring your family member. I know that goes from you said you were his brother? His son. So from your dad to your grandparents.
Like 4 generations.
4 generations. Wonderful. Well, if I may, I will read this and then we'll present you with the flag. This is a resolution of respect for Mr. Edgar Fitzgerald, a beloved school board member emeritus for Amherst County Public Schools. We are today comforted in the knowledge that Mr. Edgar Fitzgerald lived a full life in service of others for the sake of not only his family, but for the students and community of Amherst County that he served throughout his service as an Amherst County School Board member. Whereas Mr. Edgar Fitzgerald was appointed by the Amherst County Board of Supervisors on July 1st, 1963, to serve until June 30th, 1974, as a member of the Amherst County School Board. Whereas, while serving on the school board, Mr. Fitzgerald was an advocate for integration of the schools in the division, and he was proud of the peaceful transition during this time. Whereas Mr. Fitzgerald was a proponent for the betterment of the facilities in the division and helped to oversee the building of a county bus garage and the addition to Temperance Elementary School. Therefore, be it resolved that the Amherst County School Board recognizes the significant contributions of Mr. Edgar Fitzgerald to the Amherst County community as a representative and an advocate for students. Therefore, be it resolved on this 10th day in November in the year 2022 that we embrace his family and this community in their bereavement and remembrance of Mr. Edgar Fitzgerald, School Board Member Emeritus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody. My dad thought the world of Amherst County. And I'll never forget one time, years and years ago when I was real little, we were going down the road and my dad looked over at me and he said, "Son, you know of all the places the good Lord could have put us, he put us on the best place on earth." Thank y'all.
He loved Amherst.
Amen. We'll take your advice.
Dr. Wells, I believe that you have a special presentation, or someone does.
Yes, ma'am. We'll see if this will work. It won't.
Can I explain?
Am I sitting too close to that?
I think we're going to need to use this microphone tonight for everything. When the county updated the system now, the speakers in the actual roof or ceiling pick up, and it is a constant reverb loop. And they are working on that. They know that that's a problem, but I don't think Joe can fix that tonight. So, sorry about that.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. All right, so the next I have is 3.01, which is a special presentation regarding the Show Up Amherst initiative. So we have a little PowerPoint slideshow for you we're going to work with tonight. And I have the first couple slides. I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the team that's on the Show Up Amherst team. So a little bit of background on this. We came to us from, some funding came to us through the Amherst Education Foundation, and they had worked with, coordinate with Iron Lives to come up with some character development aspects for our elementary schools. And we were sitting there talking, and we came up with this, I don't know who had the bright idea, how it started. It was a team effort of this term called Show Up Amherst, kind of go off our Team Amherst approach. So we kind of started with that, and we're still kind of building the airplane as we fly it right now, but I think we're about to have it built. We kind of know what it's supposed to look like anyway. And so I want to give you a little overview of what we're doing and how that looks. So our goal here was in the community, we look at where did the idea come up from the community. We want the need to re-engage with our community. We know that is a big issue coming out of COVID, that to re-engage. And all the research is showing that re-engaging with our community is one of the top things you can do to improve schools, get the community involvement. We need to strengthen our relationships with family, community. So we're doing things to try to do that and get families and their students communicating. How often do you go to a restaurant and you see people sitting there, and instead of talking to each other, they have this out and they're just back and forth, never even saying a word to each other. So how do we re-engage, get families to re-engage with each other as well as with the schools? And then with students, to promote and model positive character development for our students. That's kind of the goals we're trying to work towards with this initiative. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jenna. She's going to talk to you about the funding and where that kind of came from.
Good evening. I'm Jenna Foster. I'm with the Amherst Education Foundation. The Amherst Education Foundation is a nonprofit volunteer organization that has been supporting Amherst County schools in a variety of ways for many years. Last year, we partnered with our longstanding partner, GLAD, to get a generous grant to support character building in the community, in classrooms, and we really wanted to focus on the elementary level. So knowing that Iron Lives has a history and a great reputation with character building initiatives, and they also work with the schools in a variety of different divisions around Amherst, I thought it would be a great partnership. And so we started this conversation, again, like Dr. Wells had mentioned, kind of building the plane as we fly it, and it has been remarkable to see the teachers, the schools embrace it, the principals embrace it, and just really focusing on community engagement, character building. Let's be honest, what student in America doesn't need a lesson on responsibility and respect and how to treat your peers and your teachers and things like that? And that's really what we wanted to focus on. So we have been given the grant from GLAD. We are so very thankful for their partnership, and we are continuing to look forward to how this rolls out. So you're going to hear more about what we've been doing with the funding and what it will look like in the coming months.
So as has been mentioned, we're very excited about this partnership. We originally, when we heard character education, we all thought curriculum. And then as we got together and we started talking and we started brainstorming about things, it was like, no, the kids aren't showing up. They're not coming to school. So giving them another curriculum, another lesson, putting another thing on teachers is really not the way to do this. So we decided to go with messaging and with activities and with events and with things to bring everybody together. And that's really where all of this came from. So we're focusing on responsibility, citizenship, and community as part of our character building. You can see on your slide there's a banner. All of our schools got banners, and a lot of the kids were able to sign their name to a pledge that's on there. I do not have it memorized, and it's very small, but it was a pledge about showing up every day. And it's about more than just showing up physically. It's about showing up and being ready to learn, showing up for your community and giving back, showing up with a positive attitude. It's about being a good person, being a good student, being good for your family, good for yourself. So, as I mentioned, it's positive messaging where we're trying to get all of the community involved. We knew that the last few years we told people don't come to our schools because we don't want the germs. So now we're saying come back into the schools. We're trying to build those stakeholders back up, at the same time modeling for our students those positive traits.
So it's been a journey, as you can tell, and we are still on it and excited about it. So we wanted to share some things that we've been able to put out there. So the first really introduction to Show Up Amherst was a social media video that was pushed out, and we wanted to share that with you now. Hopefully. The idea of the video was to really build excitement.
Thanks.
We show up.
Interpretive dance.
It was really about building excitement and anticipation as we were rolling this out. And so we had a variety of staff members basically just saying, we're showing up for you, and just really being excited, and it's very cute. So hopefully you'll be able to view that at some point. And then our first big event was our Show Up Day, which was September 30th. September was Attendance Awareness Month, and so we really focused on attendance. Ms. Patrone put together a plethora of resources for our school ATSS teams to then take ideas from and really have some kind of exciting event on that day. And I think you heard a report about those events, and everybody had a great time. And again, we're building momentum and excitement, and also hopefully building skills, building those relationships, rebuilding that community feeling that we're hoping for. So we also, in October, had Unity Day. October is Bullying Prevention Month. And so hopefully you saw the social media posts from that as well. And I think, yes. Allison.
I'm Allison Jordan. I'm the executive director from Iron Lives, and I'm pretty sure it was my fault that it turned into Show Up Amherst. I'm kind of the comedian of the group, and I've had so much fun with this team. When you're looking at an entire school division, an entire community, multiple nonprofits coming together, we're modeling what it's like to show up together for a community. And like Marie just said, we didn't want it to be one more thing for anybody. So the funding has been spent on banners that students are signing. Think about the importance of a signature. Think about the importance of signing your name on something. So we've been really intentional about pledging to show up for yourself, for your family, for your community. We have also put out little yard signs, like real estate signs with prompts. I spend a lot of my time in the car rider line. I don't know if anybody else does that, but those are hours that I cannot get back. And last year, I had this thought, like, what if we put something out there? What if we were having people think about what they wanted to say to their child? Because how many of you have ever said, "How was your day?" And then you do the wait time, and they say, "Good." So we've tried to put intentional prompts. The one outside of the building here says, it's about self-care, isn't it? You know, has Dr. Wells had lunch? Are you thinking about what you're doing for yourself? How are you showing up for yourself? So I think those have been really neat ways. And that's not a heavy lift for anybody, but is there a grandmother? Is there a community member that's driving through and seeing those signs and benefiting? I hope so. Then we have some tip sheets that the team internally, mostly not me because I'm not that creative, they're really visually pleasing about the importance of showing up to school. Think about showing up. It's the first step to success. It's what you want employees to do. It's what you want people to do for their family. Showing up and putting your phone down. Showing up and really being present. So we did one on attendance, bullying, showing up and being a good friend, being a good citizen. In November, what's the title of that one? Thankful, gratitude. It is an entire bingo board of ways to show up and be grateful. The blue prototype is a magnet that was shipped today in 7 boxes, and it will be here soon. It's a big refrigerator magnet. How many of you can remember somebody putting something up on a refrigerator about you? an important reminder. I still do that. So we wanted people to understand that what we are sending home from the Show Up Amherst team is really important. Hang it on your refrigerator. Maybe we'll get back to some old-fashioned things, like if they make a good grade, put it up on the refrigerator. If you're proud of them about something, if you want to write a note and show up for your family, put it on this huge magnet that will be on your refrigerator. So those are coming in soon. So we're spending the grant funding on things that we think are not, it's not a heavy lift for anyone, but it may really impact people beyond even parents, students. We hope it impacts the community and businesses. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I don't think you had a choice, though.
So, as I hope you can feel and see, there's such excitement about this, and there's so much potential. And so we wanted to share some coming themes for months ahead. So as you heard, November is all about gratitude. We're doing Thankful Thursdays. And then December is You Are a Gift and giving back. So thinking about what are the gifts and talents I have and how can I use them to show up for others. And then January is going to be about physical fitness. And February is positive affirmations. So really thinking about not only being affirming to others, but to ourselves as well, right? And that self-talk is so important too. And you see in the green heart, we are in the beginning stages of working on a community connections dinner. We're very excited about this and just wanting to really, as you've heard, part of this movement is about adults modeling for our students, our children. And so really wanting to be able to sit at tables and have those conversations, be intentional with the conversation, take time to be present with each other, show up for each other, hopefully have some kind of learning component to it and some fun too. So that's about all I have. I'm sure Dr. Wells would like to wrap things up, and we'll take any questions you have.
So again, I want to thank them for being here tonight, and thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be with us. But our big goal here is trying to get the community behind it and getting our students to understand the importance of being present and just showing up. And so I feel we're moving in a good direction with this. We have a long way to go. But again, hopefully this dinner we're planning out in January, February timeframe will be a success too, and get some folks out and kind of have a genuine night together. We can spend time together as a community and as families and spend some time together doing that. So that's our next big push coming forward with this. So we'll take any questions if you have them at this time.
Board, do you have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Rossi?
I've seen the signs. They're in the neighborhoods. I have seen them. Now I know the story behind them. It's good to see. Yes, you're definitely out there. I like it now that I've heard the rest of the story. Very excited. Very excited.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Justice?
last week I ran into a teacher at the post office, and she was like, "This has been amazing. These tailgates, these Show Up Amherst things, this is just what our community needed." So I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the community. I hope you're hearing it too.
Well, thank you.
Else?
No, just thank you guys for all the effort. I mean, like I said, it is great to see the community coming back together. People just getting out and having a good time. Thank you.
And I'd like to personally thank you all, for myself as well as the board, for coordinating all that together and coming up with those ideas. I'm thankful for GLAD, who helped fund it. So I'm excited about the rest of the year, and I think it's just a great way to start the year off and keep that momentum going, everything that we need as well as our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're down to 4.01, public comment. I now have two people to speak. One is Rachel Martin. Is she present? Okay, and the second is Bill Cox. So, Mr. Cox, would you like to come up and talk with us? Remember to state your name and address. And
Bill Cox, and I live at 1249 Lexington Turnpike in Amherst. And as usual, I come to you tonight representing the School Bus Drivers Association. Tonight, though, we would just like to go on record to thank you for your support this last year. I mean, both in endorsing of air conditioning for our school buses and the raise we received along with other ACPS employees. In these days of 8% plus inflation, it is appreciated, as is the bonus coming our way this month. And I can add, too, that we appreciate the tailgate parties as well. That has been awesome, by the way. So thank you again for the attention that you have shown to the Transportation Department. It's hard to put into words, but believe me, it is extremely gratifying for us to be recognized as an important part of Amherst County schools. I know the bus drivers, we feel like we are, but it is great that you, the board, and the senior staff recognize the fact that you believe we are as well. It means a lot. Now, with that said, we would like to invite each of you to our Christmas party, Friday, December 9th at 11 a.m. It'll be held at our world headquarters on Union Hill Road in Amherst. I hope you'll come and meet your bus drivers, talk to them. They sure want to talk to you. And as those of you who have been to one of these before, we can guarantee you'll enjoy great food, conversation, and you will win some prizes. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Cox. Is there anyone else tonight that would like to speak in the public? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment. We are now down to action items. I need a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
A motion, a second from Mrs. Leggett. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a consent agenda that's passed. Now we have an administrative updates.
You gotta come up with me.
Madam Chair, members of the board, under Administrative Services, first thing we'd like to do is update you on the construction project at Amherst County High School. Dr. Wells, Mr. Oakes, and I attended several meetings where they've approved the 3 public hearings for the rezoning and the parking lot. And the town council meeting is December 14th, so we'll be attending that. The SRO grant, we currently have 4 working officers. 1 is in training that will hopefully begin right after Christmas. And we also have a few in the hiring process is what they were informed me today. So we're hoping that we move on that pretty soon. The DCJS school security grant, we were informed today, we asked for about $250,000. We were informed today that we will receive about $114,000. They didn't actually have it up so we could see all the things that were approved. We should know that within the next few days, but we're appreciative to the state for at least that amount of money. So we'll tackle on that and get those things moving. As it's already November, usually it's October when we have that approved, so we definitely need to get rolling on that. We will be also, we've started installing some vape detectors at the high school in the restroom. The administration loves them and hates them at the same time, but they are working through those, and through this grant, hopefully we are able to get a few more for at the middle school as well. So hopefully all the high school bathrooms and then a few at the middle school will have those. As far as the weather, tonight we'll be monitoring that tonight and tomorrow. Hopefully we won't have any issues with that. Mr. Oakes, anything you want to add? 7.02, the suspension report. You have the suspension report. All right, any questions?
That was 6.02, suspensions report. I don't see any questions on that. Just going back to your previous things that you were talking about, I see where safety drills, SRO grant, and illness. Are you going to talk to us about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did conduct the safety drills in the schools. All the schools conducted lockdown drills. They also did their fire drills, and every school has turned those in to myself and Mr. Rokes, and we have documented on those. And during those drills, we learned a few things from that. Some work orders were submitted, and we also had the fire marshal that visited our schools these last few days, and we also have some work to do there as well. So, Mr. Rokes, anything more to add on that? What's that? Oh, yeah, right, yeah, Marie's coming up after I'm done.
Board, do you have any questions? I know, Mr. Rossi, you were talking with me about middle school and the vapes, vape detectors.
Correct. The grant that we have that we're using for the vape detectors, those are only for the high school, or?
No, sir. So we were just informed today that we got the money. When I went on the SSWS system, it wasn't uploaded yet so that I know what exactly. We asked for them in the high school and the middle schools, but I don't know exactly what was approved because we asked for about $250,000, but we were awarded 114. So tomorrow or Monday, I should know a little bit more about what exactly we were awarded on that grant.
Currently, we just had them send it to high school.
Right. We just started putting them in at the high school. We have 6 at the high school.
So all the bathrooms have them?
Not all. We're working on it. So hopefully I'll learn that in the grant that I asked for them in every bathroom. And I'm hoping that that was one of the things that they approved the full amount for. If they were, then yes, sir, they will be in every bathroom.
Do we have a cost for each one of those?
It depends on, so what has to happen is we have to run the cable for the PoE, for the power. So it depends on the cost of installation, and so they run roughly, they're about $1,500 for the sensor and then putting them in, so they're not cheap. That's why we like the grant to pay for that. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Oaks, anything else? All right, Ms. Patron.
I'm just going to briefly update you on our illnesses that are going around right now. The good news is we've only had one reported COVID case since October 25th, so that's great. However, the flu has taken off. Last Friday, Central Elementary School was getting hit pretty hard. They had 1/3 of their students out of the building because of the flu. It's looking a little better attendance-wise this week there, but as I've seen in past years, it kind of starts in one part of the county and migrates on through, so I think this is just the beginning with flu. RSV has also been a big problem this year. Dr. Gately told me yesterday in a meeting, he's the director of the health department, that in other parts of the state, the hospitals are filling up with children who have RSV. We've been very fortunate not to have that here, but we are seeing a lot of RSV even in adults. So with that said, cover your cough, wash your hands, everybody is listening, and if your child has a fever over 100 degrees, please keep them at home until they are feeling better. We want them in school every day that they are healthy, for sure. But if they are going to contaminate others, we don't want them to do that because we do want our attendance to look good. So, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Madam Chair?
Rossi?
When students are calling out, what's the average time that they're out for?
Oh, I don't know that I can answer that. It really varies by student and case. Like a flu case, it's usually just a few days. But students miss for all different reasons, and I don't always know what the reason is to kind of narrow that down.
And are we making any special plans to get them caught up quicker? We should be pretty good at doing this now.
Yes, we are pretty good at that at this point. So yeah, their work is all available on Canvas or on Google, depending on what their teachers use, and then students have the opportunity to turn their missed work in late and ask for help. We also, at the high school, are having after-school tutoring that's open to everyone, so if they're missing work, they can come for that.
Is that available to everybody or just the ones that are out sick?
That's available to everybody at the high school who wants to participate. And all of the schools have other types of programs. I could not speak to all of them, though.
Ms. Justice?
Madam Chair, thank you. Ms. Patron, how are our teachers doing? So we've had about a third of our students out. At Temperance, was it?
That
How
was
are-
Central Elementary.
Central, sorry.
Yeah.
How are our teachers doing?
I do not know that teacher attendance is any worse than it normally is. Mr. Gallagher might be able to answer that question better.
Right.
Okay, so he said it's about average, yep. If I could quickly give a shout out to our custodians who are doing double duty, wiping surfaces and spraying down rooms. They're doing a fantastic job trying to keep this all under control. Any other questions?
And I will add, you may have seen some of our districts to the west towards the western state line that have had to close schools down here recently in the past 2 or 3 weeks for RSV/flu outbreaks in their buildings. So some school divisions have had to shut individual schools down because of the numbers of students sick and staff sick. So just, we're not there, but that is occurring across other parts of the state.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Rossi?
Dr. Wells, follow-up question. Do we have like a set number where we think it'll be, a point where we might have to close schools?
It would be based off of, do we have the staff that can maintain the safety of the students? So it depends on the ones
Staffing.
who are sick and staffing issues. Student issues, if I have a third of the students out and I have my staff, I'm good. But if I have half of my staff out, this would be more problematic for us.
All right.
Thank you. We're down to 7.01, financial reports. And oh, there you are. Oh, maybe you had slipped out of there.
She
I'm just proactive. All right, I'm used to spreading out, so I'm trying to adjust here. Good evening, Madam
Take your
Chair,
time.
members of the school board. 7.01 is the financial reports through October. We are continuing along the same path as I reported back in October. The one thing I do want to point out in the revenue is that the child nutrition revenue has caught back up to what we expected. I had mentioned that last month. Expenditures, we have the same watch items, the same plan for covering those overages, and we're going to continue to monitor and adjust those projections as we have more knowns. We are expecting the utilities costs to start going up starting this month, and of course, our constant fuel question. When you look at the fuel line, which is on page 2, the last item on the object code summary, that projection is actually based on 18 additional deliveries at $4.50 a gallon. And when I was doing this projection, I thought I was in a really good place because in September and October, we were averaging about $3.80 in one month, $3.88 the second month. And actually today, we got the first bill for November, and it was $4.81 a gallon. So we're going to continue to adjust. We will be able to look at also the amount of deliveries. We usually go anywhere between 24, 26 loads a year. And last year it was 24, and I was projecting it as if we were doing 25. So as we get closer, we can look and see if we need that extra load or if we just need to look for the additional funds in the budgets. But it is always on our radar. And again, I've mentioned that we have some salary benefit overages in those specific categories that we can use. Also, we are seeing that the sales tax is higher than it was same time previous year. So we will look, and as long as the state doesn't do the new calc tool and reallocate it to something else, we're hoping to see some sales tax overage. Do you have any questions?
A quick question. Can you explain the disability for hybrid?
So there's different plans on VRS, and You have Plan 1, you have Plan 2, you have Plan 3, which is your the third plan is your hybrid plan. And the hybrid employees get different benefits than those on 1 and 2. So the funding is actually in the VRS number, which is showing the excess, and then the hybrid is showing that deficit. Now that we're working on position control, because when you hire someone, you don't know what plan they're going to be in. So it's sort of, it offsets each other. With position control, we're going to be able to tighten that up for the budget next year, so you won't see that overage. But again, it's just going to reduce the other number.
And then repairs and maintenance, 3310. That one's quite high, and as I was looking through one of the reports here, I know that it shows repairs and maintenance in a lot of different line items.
There is.
Because I guess they're like for different buildings or different.
It's different departments.
codes.
Now, the overage that I'm assuming you're talking about on page 1, the last one, it has an overage of $25,909. The supplemental appropriation that was approved this evening is taking the insurance. We're receiving some money back from some of the damage that they had from the storm, and that will be going to that line item. Now, it is $23,000, so it'll still be showing a little bit of overages, but we do have those other maintenance lines that can cover.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Rossi?
there were some comments made about the drills that happened earlier this month and some maintenance repairs as well as safety concerns. Is that going to affect our budget? Have we ran any numbers on those repairs? I'm going to send you to the podium.
Overall, most of the things are relatively minor. We don't have a lot of highlight items to take care of, and some of the things that she was talking about sort of rolled over from this last fiscal year due to when the work was occurred and when the billing occurred. So some of that happened in this fiscal year during the summer and everything. That's why some of those lines are over. But as far as the fire drills and the lockout drills, we've actually taken care of most of the lockdown drills items. They were like keys, locks, replaces some doors that were not solid doors and those type of things. And most of that work has been completed already. The fire drills, the fire inspections that just occurred within the last 2 weeks. The biggest issue we have, and this is something that has gone on for a number of years, as technology in the classrooms have changed, and we've gone to more computers, smart boards, and those type of things, and away from the old chalkboards and those items. It requires more electrical outlets in the room. One of the things that has not occurred is we have not kept up with the electrical infrastructure as these things have progressed over time. So there's certain fire codes that we have to comply with that we'll be working with the local fire inspector on, because it's not going to happen overnight, and it is going to cost them money to do it. The other aspect of it is in some parts of the schools, we have to look at how much electricity we have as far as the current load on panels and those type of things, and do we have the capacity to make those changes. So this is something we're working on. This information just came within we actually got the first report Friday night, so we've been going through those type of things, and we're going to try to address as much as we can. And I've been working with a local fire inspector and the new public safety director, and they know that these type of things they won't get fixed overnight.
Right.
That's my biggest concern as far as the fire inspections is the electrical capacity that we have to address over a period of time.
Have they given us a date on that, or?
There's certain things that, as far as the fire inspection requirements, they'll come back within a month to look at. And like I said, I've already talked to them with these electrical things that we have. There's no way, particularly this month, we're basically down about a week for Thanksgiving anyway. We work 2 days. So there's no way that those items can be corrected in this amount of time, and they're aware of it due to the amount of rooms in all of the schools. This is not one school. This is an issue in all the schools. Like I said, just the way, the electrical supply, electrical demand we have in the classrooms is quite different than what it was, let's say, 5 and 10 years ago.
Correct.
So we have to come up with a good plan about how do we address these things, what are the highest priorities and type of things, so we can get to the ultimate goal of having, the appropriate number of outlets in the room. What the issue is we don't have enough outlets in the rooms, and they're using like multi-plug adapters and those type of things to run the devices. So even though they're used out there in the market, in a commercial environment, in a school environment, you're not allowed to by code to do those type of things.
All right, so I guess we have to have a plan together, obviously, then we'll get some numbers and find out what it is, because I'm feeling that's gonna be a priority coming on to the next year's budget. I would say is probably something that would.
Correct. And like I said, we just, received the reports and, we've got to come up with a definitive plan and work with finance and look at funding, and that may be something we come back with. And again, working with the Public Safety Department and the fire inspectors and fire marshals, I've already advised them, and they know. I mean, I was in that role for 13 years, so, it doesn't happen overnight. So they're aware of that, and they want to work with the school system as well.
Okay. That's all I had.
Anything else? Thank you.
All right, my next item is 7.2, and it is the record retention regulation. If you recall, at the October board meeting, we had provided the Title IV monitoring finding and the corrective action plan that had been sent to the state, to VDOE on September 29th. This finding was for the need for the division to have a written process or plan in place to ensure that we're compliance with the Library of Virginia's record retention policy. Now, we have not received feedback from our corrective action plan. We did follow up, and they have not started reviewing them as of mid-October. So it's still going through their process, but we're going to proceed according to our plan because our plan has dates tied to it. In the plan, we said in November we were going to bring the board the regulation. So that's what we're doing tonight. We have provided that, and it is actually the Library of Virginia's template that they have provided that is making sure that we're following the Code of Virginia and that we're in compliance with the Virginia Public Records Act. So that is what has been provided for you tonight. The second piece is in December, we have to submit a records retention manual and procedures guidelines to the state. Our work isn't over. We have this regulation. We have to designate who the people are with those roles and responsibilities. We set up meetings to go over to make sure the disaster recovery, the areas of when we're storing everything, that we're in compliance. So we're still working on that, but we did want to keep to that corrective action plan and bring that to you tonight. It is, after we get all that worked out, we then need to communicate it to the staff, and we will work on that plan. And also, we would like to have it added to the Amherst County website, so that we would have a records retention that could have the links to the videos, the regulations, the locality schedules. So we are working on that. But tonight we just wanted to provide you with the regulations. It is for information. It is our intent to have this to be added to policy DA, and that is over the management of funds. And the reason we selected that is because it sort of encompasses everything in the finance department. It includes your budget documents, your financial accounting and reporting, your purchasing, your payroll. It just seemed to fit in that area as opposed to getting each section of it.
Questions? I think it was a nice document, and the only question I had was what policy are we going to attach it to, and you already answered that, so thank you.
So 7.3 is the update on our ESSER 3 funds, and we usually take this as an opportunity to update you on all the different CARES funding pots. On page 1, we're pleased to report that everything that has expired, we have spent 100% and have been reimbursed. So the only thing left on page 1 is the ESSER 2 funds. And we're showing that we have spent 62.55%, and that does expire September 30th, 2023. And I want to just say that if we factor in the funding that's still out there for the design of the high school renovation and addition, that's another 11.5%, which will take us up to having spent 74.05. So then we were looking at just under 26%, about 840,000. Half of that is already encumbered in salaries this year, so for taking us through the end of this fiscal year. We would still have some opportunity to do some salaries if we need to next year, up until when the grant expires in September, as well as we still have some technology purchases in the Wi-Fi and hotspots.
Question is, the 840 encumbered for salaries, are they for positions that are just within the grants?
Yes, well, we have 843 that wouldn't be accounted for. Within CARES 2, we currently have $464,000 encumbered, which would leave us about 380, and that is what we could then look at. We have the technology that's going to be purchased. We have the Wi-Fi, the hotspots, and then we would have anything that's left over. We can look at FY24 salaries to take us for the first few months. Does that help?
Right, I guess I'm just asking if these are temporary salaried positions. I'm seeing
They
some
are.
nods over
These
here.
they are, and then we have CARES 3, so some of those positions
Can carry
may
over.
go into CARES 3 for the subsequent year. Right. On page 2, the first one is the American Rescue Plan Individuals with Disabilities. We're showing 57.01% spent. We actually have 100% if you include what's encumbered for the payrolls. So that one is good. Actually, the same thing on the following, the preschool teacher. We have those positions, and they have several funding sources. We anticipate they will be spent down in February of this year. The ESSER 3 before and after school, they are in the planning stages to see how they're going to set that up and what model they're going to use to get those spent down, but they are working on it currently. The next one is the homeless funds, and we have spent 1%. We are assisting the families as the needs arise. I know there's been more expenditures this month, but that funding is still out there. The ESSER 2 social emotional, we have a position that's funded partially, so where it's showing 45.32% spent, we actually have 100% encumbered, with some of it actually going over and will go into the CARES 3 funding source. So on page 3, the top is the largest award that we received, the ESSER 3. And we are showing that we have spent 17.74% and that we have over $6 million remaining. Now, of that $6 million, 4.6 of that's going to the high school renovation. So that's 63% of the grant. So if you factor that in, we really have 80.74% that we know is coming. Now, we also have salaries that are running in there. So once we take everything into account, we will have about $850,000 that could transfer over into salaries for the subsequent year. The next one has been 100% spent. The third one is actually the HVAC. And again, that's going to be the high school project once we get to the HVAC stage. And then the final one is the recruitment and retention funds. We have paid out some of the recruitment bonuses, and of course, not all of them have been filled yet, and then we have to wait until they meet the criteria for the retention portion of it. Do you have any questions?
Oh, Mrs. Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lukavich. The retention bonus, is that only to be able to be used to retain people that were just recruited, or is it able to be used to encourage those who have been here and are still here?
Go ahead.
I can answer that. The recruiting and retention. The second half of that money, the retention piece, is if they sign on in our new contract at the beginning of the next school year. So for example, they may get $1,000 in December, for example, if they were joined on this year. The second portion of that would be if they, one, had appropriate performance and then signed on under contract for the next year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm just curious, what are we doing to keep our teachers that we already have? Because I know one of our neighboring school districts are actually recruiting our teachers right now. So what are we doing to keep our teachers here in Amherst?
I'll give that a shot too. I think what we're trying to do is be incredibly supportive of our teachers that are here, understanding, the value of those teachers, to put things into place to help, recognize their efforts from a financial standpoint,
hopefully we will be able to get creative and find ways to make sure we give enough raises for folks to entice them to stay with us. And that'll be a conversation we have with you as we develop the budget moving forward.
And is it common for schools to go recruit teachers at other neighboring school districts, or is it just?
Okay, we'll give this a shot with the microphone. Regionally, we certainly work together, hopefully professionally, and don't always do that. However, you can only do so much with recruiting individuals from neighboring divisions. They are not typically released from contract just because we request to hire them here. So they're under contract. When they finish the year out, then they have flexibility if they're not under contract to come here. So formal recruiting, I guess I can't really speak to that. I'm sure if individuals are interested in coming here from other divisions, we would certainly welcome that. We don't necessarily promote that in order to take teachers away from each other because we have a good working relationship regionally in our area.
All right, thank you.
Good. Is that all, Ms. Lukanich?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Now we're down to 8.01, update on accountability.
Okay, I'm going to try it from here, and I think it's just William. You can come sit back here. Okay. So the first item, 8.01, is on accountability, and I have three different things for you to take a look at. You should have something, Office of School Quality. It is our fall division level information. On October 12th, the superintendent, myself, and members of my staff met with the Virginia Department of Education Office of School Quality. They are the ones who monitor all of the schools for accreditation. And we went through a process with them to explain our plan of attack in what we were doing in the schools, how we were going to have each of the schools fully accredited, those that were under monitoring, those that were under academic review, and those that were accredited with conditions. We went through that, and this is the feedback that they provided us. We had two commendations. The first one was on our data presentation, which was the exact presentation that we gave to you as a board. You actually saw that first. Then the second one was just our transparency with them in talking about our division findings. If you look on the school profile, all of our schools are accredited. However, we know that if you take current year information from last year, we would not be at that same place. And so when we talked to the Virginia Department of Education and this monitoring team, this review team, they were very open to the plan of us determining root causes, what we were going to do to turn around what we needed to do in our subgroup areas and in our indicators. And that was one of the commendations that we received from them on the plan that we already had in place and had already started implementing this year. We did have 4 recommendations from them that we are currently in the process of implementing. The first one is to continue to develop and implement systems to examine those root causes. Have we looked at all the data that they've specifically identified, and what were those data points that we were tracking? The second one was to attend lesson planning sessions with teachers. That way we could assure the alignment of the written, taught, and tested curriculum. We have begun doing that in our elementary, in our PLCs, and we have already worked with our instructional staff at our department meetings. Our department chairs have worked with us on that. Dr. Wells will talk later about what he's doing with the superintendent's advisory in regards to that. The third one was to consider revisiting expectations with our administrative staff, our principals, to support the fidelity of implementation. And that was an array of things on the alignment process, specifically to lesson plan expectations and what we as a division had expectations in regard for lesson planning across the division, pre-K all the way through 12th grade, and what that looked like. And we are in the process, of course, Dr. Wells will talk about that a little bit later on, of implementing that recommendation as well. And then consider the fourth one was implementing a process of highlighting our teachers who were successful in this implementation. What is the process that we are going to do to recognize those that are going above and beyond, those that are just implementing what we're asking them to do and what the state is requiring them to do. We have 2 more monitoring areas. Winter of 2023, it's our mid-year review that we will go through this same process, and then again in the spring. In the spring, they're actually monitoring us on any school that has a level 3 indicator, which right now is all but 2 schools that have level 3 indicators that we're dealing with in regards to anything from reading, math, chronic absenteeism, you name it, we have that there. I'll take any questions if you'd like in regards to our feedback from the state. Okay.
I think Ms. Justice
Go
might have
ahead.
a question.
Madam Chair, thank you, Dr. Norman, for your presentation and making Amherst shine with your visual presentation. When it says examining the root cause, what do we have some of those root causes identified?
Yes, ma'am. So we know right now when we look at, and this is a little bit different than we've done before because we are coming out of a pandemic. So looking at root causes is our curriculum specific to where we are teaching phonetic base. Let's talk about phonics and how early on and what are we doing. So we've already taken steps to provide our teachers professional development, provide information and training for them with our reading specialists to get down to some very specific things with our students in our reading. We've also done that with math. So we have looked at our data most of the summer, basically, and taken a look and kind of tracked it over the last 2 years to specifically pinpoint not just groups of students, but skills that they're missing, like that gap that they're not getting and where did they miss it. An example would be in our science, when our 4th grade students took the 5th grade test last year, they were students who were 4th graders who got a hybrid class. So they may have only gotten 30 minutes and it may have been in a cafeteria or a gymnasium, and it was mostly online. One of the big things that were missed were content on the ocean. Well, that is not a 5th grade SOL. That is only a 4th grade SOL. But if they missed that SOL, now we had to do a crosswalk. Ms. Smith worked with the science teachers and actually embedded 4th grade science SOLs into the 5th grade kids that they have right now. So we'll make sure we catch those up, and that is considered a root cause, that they missed that actual content. And so we're addressing those.
When, Madam Chair, Dr. Norman, when Governor Youngkin gave his speech a few weeks back, one of the things that Mrs. Balow, or Dr. Balow, brought up was that the losses in Virginia were not limited to COVID, but they were long-standing. And it seemed that curriculum was highly paid attention to. What are we doing to shift that as we're looking ahead?
In regards to curriculum?
I think curriculum, yeah, it seemed like he was saying that our standards have been lowering, and this is not just something from COVID. This has been going on a long time, and how are we addressing that? Or how how does that speak to you as?
I think one of the things that we had to do was to go back and look specifically at, well, we're not crazy. If the state is going to make sure that I am accredited and they're going to look at math, reading, and science, I'm going to focus on math, reading, and science. So the first thing that we did as a division was actually look at those K through 12 curriculum. What do we have in place? I already know that we have new standards right now for science for 2023 that are implemented right now. Well, until those standards became approved, it would be crazy for me to adopt or go through an adoption of a textbook, because then I wouldn't know if that textbook aligned with what the standards were. So the processes that we use, it usually takes 2 years for a textbook adoption from start to finish. We have to wait on the state to actually provide us what their state-approved curriculum is. They have to then develop the standards that go with that, and then we fall into place on that. So there are things that the state does that impact what we do. And then we as a division, knowing that we've got kids struggling in reading, we've got kids that are struggling in our math, and now we have brand new standards in science, there are things that we've put into place specifically at elementary for our math and our reading, but across the board. So every summer, we have a group of teachers who actually review our curriculum maps, our pacing guides, and then adapt any lessons or things that need to be, and these are teachers frontline in the classroom that know where their kids are. And we've done that probably the last 5 or 6 years that I've been here.
Do we have any districts across the state that seem to be doing better or doing things a little differently as far as maybe methodology? Textbooks are really important, but methodology and pedagogy is critical.
One of the things, and maybe I said it wrong, the textbook, that's a resource for our teachers. It is not the end-all be-all. They have to be we consider them professionals in the classroom. So they have to create those engaging lessons. They have to make sure that our kids are learning not just at the standard, but above the standard, because we want them to advance into those AP classes and those dual enrollment classes and move on into either college or career. So yes, ma'am, I totally agree with you on that. We do work across the Region 2000, with multiple divisions come together with not only our Director of Instructions, but our Student Services Department to see what strategies, what methodologies are working, and we feed off of each other to see what that looks like.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Rossi?
Dr. Owen, the way you execute a plan and know if it's successful or not,
Monitoring.
by monitoring it, yes. And I know that testing is a great way to do it, but putting more work on an already stressed environment for our teachers, just from what I'm taking in, you basically have a teacher teaching 4th and 5th grade at the same time.
Only
Parts
of it, yes,
Parts,
sir.
right. Well, you've got your classroom and you've got it broken down into your blocks and you're teaching 4th, 5th grade. It's still teaching both, whether it's a portion or the entire class. Now, how can we gauge that moving forward consistently enough to assure that students are getting that level of education that they're going to need, and also to move Amherst forward without putting more stress on the teachers? Is there another way to evaluate it without putting more on the teachers and getting more from the students?
Right. I think I understand what you're talking about, or what you're asking. One of the things that we're trying to do this year specifically with science, that's why I gave you the example, is make up ground where we know we saw kids not getting content. So that is not something that happens every year. It's something that we're trying to do to kind of fill the gap, because we know if we don't fill it now, it's just going to spiral up when they take earth science or biology or chemistry. And so we need to catch it as early as we can. And we try to do that across the board with all of our content area. And we rely heavily on our teachers. They are the experts in the classroom. I can't sit here and tell you that I know everything that goes on in every content area, but I can tell you the teacher that I would pick that knows that. And we rely on them completely in regards to that.
And I'll add,
Yeah, please.
I want to scoot back here. So my microphone works. So I would add to that, you know, with the science, as she brought that science example up, let's see how close I can get up here. As she brought that science example up, you got to remember our fourth grade science last year, they still missed instructional time due to COVID-related instances. So the fourth grade and fifth grade, you take the science as fifth graders. They don't take an SOL test in fourth grade for science, take it in fifth grade. So in order to make sure those fourth graders get the content that they might have missed last year, we're doing a little extra in the fifth grade courses, as opposed to now, once we get through the responses of COVID the last couple of years, we should be able to make sure that instruction should be going on well enough in the fourth grade class than in the fifth grade. But we also need to make sure we're reviewing content from fourth grade, because I know me, when I was in school, something I learned in fourth grade, I might not retain into fifth grade, so I still need to make sure I'm going back and teaching some of those content areas from fourth grade, because they don't get tested until the end of the fifth grade year on stuff they may have learned the first week of fourth grade year in science. So it's kind of one of those, it's a double-edged sword there with that one, because of how the state is assessing it. It's a fourth and fifth grade combined assessment. So some materials taught in fourth grade does have to be retaught or just reviewed in fifth grade. Does that help answer that question a little bit?
Yeah, my concern is how are we gonna know we're on the right road to success before we get to that point where the tests are taken and we found out that our curriculum fell short? That's my biggest concern, is that we're putting all this effort into a plan, and we're in uncharted territory, bringing kids from 2 years behind,
Yes, sir.
statewide, and bringing us up to grade level. It's a daunting task to do within a school year.
Yeah, we really do periodic checks. Our teachers are very good at doing quick checks with the content that they teach. They also are required in their grades each 9 weeks to do a mastery of content, as well as a measure of progress. I always forget that one, which is formative. Are they working through it? And then summative, did they get it? Do they know it? And that's their grade. That's what happens in the classroom. And then at the division level, we just purchased, over the last couple of years, we've done MAP assessments for math and reading, but we really didn't have anything for the other content areas. We chose to go and revert back to what's called Performance Matters, where teachers had actually requested it, to where they can create their own 5 or 10 questions, and they can actually monitor along the way and kind of revert back to say, okay, well, this group of kids didn't get that concept. Let me spiral that back into my lessons over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So it's a constant monitoring that they're doing throughout the year.
Now, I understand that we have a large group that are catching up, and they will move forward at different rates. We understand that. Now, do we have anything in place to help students that are a little bit slower moving forward? What does the school offer the students and the families to be able to move forward at a pace that can keep them up with the rest of their class that may be moving faster than they are?
Yeah.
What program is out there for those students?
Well, I hate to say it, it's not a program. We have multiple strategies and processes that we use with students. We are required under VDOE and the federal government to have an early intervention program or
Right.
process, which that is with math, that's with reading, that is our PALS, our Title I. So our elementary gets lots of supports in regards to that. We have algebra readiness, which is specific to our math programs. We also have an in-school remediation and an intervention time, an intervention block. So they have, we're getting ready to go through with the end of the semester, another round of remediation. The high school does a phenomenal job. Donna Ratliff and a team of teachers up there actually work with students every single day to kind of get them where they need to be. So it's an all hands on deck, I would have to say. And you were the high school principal.
And if I may interject for just a moment, Mr. Rossi, I don't know, I know that you have shared some thoughts that you have had about maybe a think tank of coming up with ways to help some of those students that are behind. And you had some very novel ideas, I thought, from my perspective. For the sake of time, that might be something that you could go and sit down with Dr. Norman and Dr. Wells and maybe share some of your ideas. I will say this, for those of you that are new on the board, we have been here before. We have been at a place where we have had a lot of challenges with accreditation and bringing our students up. And we have watched all of the things that we've heard Dr. Norman talk about and the staff. They have a lot of things in place. They know they work. And they actually worked, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we had our final and all of our schools accredited right prior to COVID. But when I came on the board, there were a lot of challenges, sort of like what we're seeing now, and these same type of discussions. And so I will say the staff has learned a lot. They've put a lot of things in place. It has worked before. It will work again. But given the challenges of COVID, it's going to take time. It is. And so I don't mean to cut off the discussion.
No, it's completely understandable.
But just for the sake of time, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your inquiry is coming from your desire to look at some novel ways that could help those students.
Right, we're struggling in our children's education, and you said it's been that way before. The state has put things into place. That's why we go to our different levels for our schools. So there are alarms in place, so to speak. But we're in uncharted territory. I don't think we've been this far back, and we don't know how long it's going to take to get there. We have conventional ways of doing it, but we may need to think outside the box to get ourselves forward a little bit quicker. And maybe, together, and that's the only way it's going to happen, together as a team and move our students further, faster, and set the tone for the rest of the state. I don't think we can, it's not undoable for us. I think we can do it. I'm pretty sure we will do it.
And I agree with you. Dr. Wells?
I'd just like to add that, at elementary level especially, you see it. I've been in schools quite often the past few weeks. But when you go into a school at the elementary level, they have their groupings, and they group their students. So you might have a high reading group, a middle reading group, and a lower reading group, for example. And so those students are grouped, and they go to the teacher for that specific instruction that they need based off of where they are. And so you'll see that, especially at that level. And so some of the things you're talking about, we're doing in that capacity, because they're identifying those students that are struggling in a certain area, and they're putting resources in place to assist those students with those, while your kids that aren't struggling as much are doing maybe research on this topic for that 15 minutes while this teacher is working with those individual students who are struggling with that concept too. So you'll see it especially at that level, but you also see it all the way up, especially elementary, where we do the grouping and break them down in classes so they can get the assistance they need.
I will say this, I think you made a good point, Mr. Orasi, is that we're in unprecedented territory as far as the amount of gaps for the number of students that we have. And so being able to be expeditious and to make it happen quickly for the sake of our students, I think that we do need to look at some ideas that maybe think outside the box. But I know he has a few that you might be interested in.
That would be great. We'll take anything. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Dr. Norman. Reading night?
Yes, I have two more things that I'd like to just give you a quick thing. One of them is a standards update. So it just gives you information in regards to what standards are actually new and now being implemented and what year it will be assessed. This is just, we give this to you every October, November when the state comes out with all of their information, and that's just for your reading pleasure. The next thing is just information on VKRP. The Virginia Kindergarten Readiness Program is an assessment that is, it's a kindergarten screener that happens with all kindergartners across the state. It is something that Virginia Department of Education now requires every kindergartner to participate in. And it is a 47-page document that I have provided to you from this past year's information. One of just the highlights, we're about 5 points off of the state average. All of our kindergartners tested this year. We began this process. We actually piloted it for the state of Virginia back in 2018. So we don't have an enormous amount of comparable data, but we will be taking this information. It's provided to our pre-K, so they'll know how they did in working with their children. It'll go to our kindergarten teachers, and then, of course, we'll show the information to our first grade teachers as well. But that's just for your information.
Dr. Norman, does that break that down into specific content skills?
Yes, ma'am, it does. And by school. So it's tested on two different areas, big areas. The first is the actual math performance. It's specific to math. And then the second overall is self-regulation and social skills. And then it breaks it down even further. And it's lots of charts and data for you to take a look at. And either myself, Ms. Wheeler, or Ms. Smith, if you have any questions, if you want to email us, we'll be more than happy to answer those for you. Okay. The next thing I would like to, first, Ms. Berg's not here, so I'm not, she had requested the last time information on outcomes from our reading specialist, their progress in areas, and I had asked Ms. Wheeler to pull together some information just so y'all could see the type of data that comes from our students that are working with our reading specialist. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wheeler, and then she's going to actually talk to you about our Title I story time. And I'm going to pass that.
Madam Chair, members of the board, what we've pulled together tonight is just a sampling of some of the PALS data that Mrs. Matheny and myself worked through along with our reading specialist. So there on the first tab is what we typically do each year with our data to compare where we are division-wide with the number of students that are identified on the PALS screening. The PALS screening is a phonological awareness screening that we give in Amherst County with all of our students K-5. Those students in K-3 who do not meet the summed benchmark score, which is made up of a spelling or a phonics inventory and then a word recognition component. In kindergarten, they also are asked to look at letter sound knowledge, rhyming, some of those foundational reading skills. And so the PALS assessment really does give us a minimal benchmark of where we would want kids to be when they enter in the fall with us. And then if they don't meet that benchmark, we provide them with that 2.5 hours of remediation support, either through the Title I specialist or a PALS provider, and in some cases, our SPED case managers. So this data here on this chart, if we look specifically in column K, and it's a lot of data here to look at, so I just want to hit a couple of high points. But in column K, row 24, It's showing that in the fall, when we took our assessment in fall of '21, we had 37% of our students tested who ID'd. They did not meet that sum score benchmark. If we move over to column O, row 24, we can see that in the spring, those same students, when tested, we only identified 30% of those students. So division-wide, we had a 7% reduction, which is what we want. In PALS, we want a reduction in numbers, and SOLs, we want an increase in our numbers. And so then additionally, if you look up at the top in that blue section of the chart, that is showing the number of students who had a reduction, who were receiving that direct support. So from our reading specialists, from our PALS providers that we have come into our classrooms and work with students, from our SPED case managers, looking for those students who got that systematic and explicit support for phonics and word recognition. We saw a 27% reduction, which is a good thing for those students. And that's looking at 599 students, if we put a number to that in the fall, and then 159 of those students no longer identified. They met the benchmarks of where they needed to be. The second way that we look at data for PALS in the division on that second tab is looking at trend data. We do this at the division level, we do this at the school level. This information is given to our reading specialists and to our building administrators as they work through their CSEP process, looking at all of their data points. And going back to some of our conversation tonight about what instruction looked like pre-COVID and what instruction looks like now, you can see when we look at those trends from the fall, which is what identifies a student, and then in the spring when they take that assessment again, you can see from that fall of '21 to spring of '22, that's where we had that 7% reduction. If you look at previous years, the year before, when our students were back with us, we actually had a 6% increase in the number of students identified. And then pre-COVID, you can see that we didn't really see much change for students from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So we're very excited about some of the things that we've implemented with the recent addition of the Virginia Literacy Act, really trying to focus on that phonics instruction to meet kids where they are, to go back and fill in some of those holes that we know that they've missed, that they're struggling. They have to be able to read in order to comprehend. And so that's what we're really trying to work on specifically with those students. The third piece of this data, the third tab there, is how we're looking at this data this year. So each year we take this data, we look at it, we try to respond to what we're seeing. We think, what else can we look at? What else can we glean from this data? And so we're doing just what we showed you on the first tab, looking specifically at the school. But as we know, with our schools that are having issues with their accreditation, looking at where we are with our school improvement efforts through our CNA process with our principals, looking at data and identifying needs and trying to develop goals, we felt like it was important to dig a little bit deeper and look at some subgroup data. And that's really difficult with PALS and the way that they give their data out. And so I have to give a big shout out to Ruth Matheny, who has been frantically working to pull this data. We've chosen, as you can scroll down, it's lots to look at, and it's kind of overwhelming, to be honest, but we chose to really look at our subgroups of our students with disabilities, our Black students, our Ls, and our economically disadvantaged, because through our CSEP process, those were our subgroups we've identified as those that we need to be mostly concerned about right now. And so just really being able to look at each grade level for this specific elementary school and just seeing where those students are falling within those groups. And as we continue to look at our PALS data and have it kind of finalized for the fall assessment window, we'll be happy to bring that back and share it with you. But just wanted to give you a snapshot of kind of what we're doing with our PALS data, what our PALS data is showing, and how those students are responding to the intervention that they're receiving. Okay. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them, or I'll move on to Literacy Night. So we are very excited to be hosting our Title I Virtual Literacy Night. Our theme is Learning is Cool, and we're super excited because we are collaborating for this particular session with Ms. Wanda Smith, our supervisor of Math, Science, and Gifted, to really bring in awareness not only for the importance of those foundational reading skills that we just talked about with our PALS assessment, but also to reinforce and support parents on how to encourage science inquiry at home and reading support at home. And so we want to officially invite our school community to join us virtually. We've given you a Google Meet link there. During our session, we'll provide some tips for parents on how to support literacy and how to support science inquiry at home. We're going to participate in a very simple investigation, learning about how a polar bear stays warm in the winter and in their environment with things that you families can find right into their kitchen so they can join along with us and do the investigation. We also have a guest reader that's going to read a bedtime story for our students and then offer some door prizes for our participants and then close out our evening with a survey to figure out what else can we do to support our parents and families at home. So we just wanted to officially invite you to that as well.
Thank you. That sounds like an exciting event.
Thank you.
Maureen is cool.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Okay, moving on. This is the last thing on my list. 8.03, this is regarding the policy under Code of Virginia 22.1-16.8. It was from Senate Bill 656 that required you as a board to adopt model policy by January 1st of 2023. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Maddox, who has been overseeing this particular policy.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the Instructional Materials Review Committee has met several times to discuss the Video E model policy and also most recently the policy updates from the Virginia School Board Association that addresses SB 656 regarding sexually explicit content contained in instructional materials. And all of our discussions has kind of led us as a committee to recommend using the update sent from the Policy Services Department at the Virginia School Board Association. If you look at the policies put out by the VSBA, the first one, IIA, which is instructional materials, the VSBA has updated the policy to reflect the enactment of the Virginia Code 22.1.16 by SB 656, which requires each school board to adopt a policy consistent with the requirements of the Virginia Code and the VDOE model policy by January 1st. The legal references and cross-references on the policy were also updated. The changes also include additional information to ensure parental notification of any instructional material that includes sexually explicit content is provided, as well as the definitions. If you look down at the next policy, which is IIAB, the supplemental material selection adoption, the VSBA has updated the policy to include the references to procedures required by the policy IIA instructional materials. Legal references and cross-references were also updated on that policy. One sentence was added to that policy to ensure that teachers follow the superintendent's procedure that's required in policy IIA. On the policy IIA update, the bulleted items that you see would be described in a separate document, which would be the IIAR, which would be our procedures and regulations to the policy IIA. The library media specialists have already met, and we've begun revising our current procedures to reflect changes needed to comply with the new policy. I'd like for the library media specialists to continue to work on this and give us a rough draft so that we can bring that back to this committee to review. So, and make that recommendation to Dr. Wells.
Okay, and what do you need from us tonight?
So this is a first read. I think I can talk back here. This is a first read. This is just for your information. And then we just want to make you aware that the committee is recommending that we go with the VSBA because it covers everything that's required in state code. Therefore, we feel it would be good just to use this one as opposed to creating our own. And then also the regulation aspect, we wanted the board to be aware that we are creating the regulations that will support all the requirements in those bullets from IIA. So the regulation will be developed, what goes into how are we going to do the things that are discussed as far as the sexually explicit content, the library books or other books in the division that may or may not be used. So the regulation will come, but we want to let you be aware that this is first read for policy. Take time to read over it over the month. And in December, we would like for the policy, unless you have any major heartburn with this policy, for us to be able to approve this policy to make us in compliance with the Code of Virginia by January 1st. And then we'll have a draft of the regulation to you in December as well.
Okay. Board, do you have questions, comments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Justice?
Thank you. Mr. Maddox, so if I'm understanding correctly, VSBA has provided a template that is the base, the minimal requirements. And so we can add to it and raise the bar. So one of the things I don't see in here is an opt-in for parents. When it comes to sexually explicit materials to minors, we need to have, from my view, I would urge the board to consider making certain that our parents opt into this and don't accidentally discover it because they didn't read their notifications well. The second thing is I don't see a rubric of any kind that would give basically a definition of what parents can expect in certain categories. In the absence of one that's been professionally developed by VSBA or by our department, I would urge the booklooks.org. It is not a tool to determine if something should be in the library. It is simply a tool to define categories. We'll say blue category, green category, orange category. This is what is it? This one has oranges, this one has apples. So if I want a book that only has apples, I get that one. So I would urge the board to ask for that. Policy is where we set the goal, and if we don't stipulate those things to be included in our policy, there's no accountability for the regulation.
Well, I think when we meet as a committee, we can address some of those things, and we hope that the regulations would cover all of those things that you just talked about.
Also, I want to ask this question of our committee. I know that you're presenting this policy to us, which just covers instructional material that's basically being used in the classroom. The teacher is requiring that. I think the policy does a good job of laying out expectations, as Ms. Justice said, to the minimum of what we're required to do. We have talked about doing an opt-in, and she's mentioned that. We mentioned that at the last meeting. And I know at this point, only 2 board members have voiced that concern. But is that something that you feel would be better in the regulation or better in the policy?
I would have to take that to the committee. I know we've been talking about those things, that would be in the regulation.
Okay.
How we would address that.
So the board, to Mrs. Justice's point, may want to address that with your comments as well as to whether you think that would be an appropriate place in the regulations or in the policy. The second question I want to ask of the committee is, I thank you for just naturally going from the policy, which we have to have on the first, and so that's timely, and then moving to the regulation. One of the questions that I have is that this is addressing basically the instruction within that classroom that a teacher may assign, but is the committee considering moving into maybe a third level after the regulation is written for instructional material that will address some of the sexually explicit materials that are within the library? Is that
Yes.
like a natural third step? Is that the committee's understanding? And the reason I'm asking is that as a committee, that's been set up by the board, once that's been accomplished, that committee is dissolved. So I'm trying to clarify tonight as to whether the committee's understanding and the board's understanding of the work to be done is aligned. Does that make sense? So I'm hearing from you that the committee does feel like that it's a natural, the policy, the regulation, and then address the more specifics in the library, which may or may not include ratings and things like that.
When I met with the library media specialist, what they're trying to come up with is a regulation that would not only be followed in the library media, but also by teachers and stuff in the classroom. So it would encompass, this regulation or whatever we do with our procedures would encompass not only instructional materials, but also how we would adopt and purchase and everything in the library media. So so we're consistent across what we want to do with this policy.
Dr. Wells?
Our regulation, again, would be written to effect that you have classroom instructional materials as well as library media materials in the library. So their goal is to encompass both of those in the regulation, not just have it focused on instructional materials in the classroom, but also have the regulation, have it be consistent enough across both that it can speak to both, but also have the verbiage in there for that. So that's our goal moving that forward, to have both of those in there. So again, we hope to have a draft to you of that in December, at least a good working draft of that, and then we'll continue to revise that based on feedback. But yet, you know, that's our goal. But our main priority, though, is by January 1 to have some type of policy in place that covers us to be in compliance with the Code of Virginia.
I would be interested in board's opinion on whether you think that incorporating the library component under this instructional policy is adequate, or if we need a separate policy. I'm a little concerned about putting it under here since it's very definitive. I don't want it to be that we don't have any policy for our selection of our library books. So I would like your guidance and your thoughts.
Madam Chair,
Rossi?
the materials for classroom and research materials, I believe, is addressed in the policy. Did I read that correctly? So it was talking about media.
Supplemental
video.
materials, right.
Right, and that would all have to come from the library, but we don't explicitly say from our library. So if it comes from an outside source, how do we control that?
Well, again, it's up to, the way the policy is written, it's up to the superintendent and going down to the principal to identify I'm reading right there, to identify a process for identifying instructional materials, including supplemental materials, which could be library books. So I think it's in the policy. It's not verbatim saying library books, but it's any material in the building that a student would have access to, they would use. Then I think it would cover us on that. But I can get some feedback from other folks and see.
Well, and I agree that with supplemental, it could cover that, but I tend to think of the supplemental as a teacher wants to bring in these supplemental materials to go along with their curriculum. That's my take on it personally. So it may be that we need some different opinions on that to just verify and make sure that, because I think some of the library material can be just conceived as recreational use. And if that's there, you know, we do have to inform the parents as well. So
one of our
I just want to
things,
make sure as
right.
we're going forward that
Right.
we're clear as to how we want to do that.
One of our suggestions right now to the committee is that any book that is deemed to have be sexually explicit in their library, that gets noted. And anytime a student were to try to check that book out, the parent would have to give parental permission for any book rated as sexually explicit, so to speak. Would have to approve that student checking that book out. Student couldn't check it out without parental notification, parental permission. So that's one thing we're talking about in the regulation, how that would work in the reg. So regardless of whether it's used being for instructional material or not, if a student were to check it out and it is deemed to be sexually explicit, again, a parent would have to have permission to be flagged, or a student cannot check out without.
Any other board members have thoughts or questions? Okay. Thank you very much, and thank the committee for their hard work.
Am I up? All right. So,
9.01.
yes, indeed. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, good evening. The first item I have before you is this month's vacancy report, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that you have regarding that information.
I don't hear any. Anybody else? Nope.
Okay, thank you for that. The second item is just a review of where we are with our calendar committee. It is calendar time to start proposing a calendar for the 23-24 school year. So our ACPS calendar committee met on October 20th initially, which is made up of representatives from different positions throughout the division, as well as a parent for stakeholder input. From that meeting, we came out with two draft calendars potential for the next school year. That is based on the priorities that were identified last year in calendar building. One of those drafts reflects a very similar framework to what we have this year. And the second calendar is based largely on more recent and current hopes and priorities, from a lot of our instructional staff, that we end our calendar year, our school year, by the end of May. So this current year, we go through the first week of June, and the reason for that is largely due to the different breaks that we've built into that calendar, whether they be holiday breaks, whether they be planning days, professional development days. We tried to schedule it so there was never a long stretch or period where there wasn't some type of break there. We honored their requests of the committee and throughout the division that we provide a teacher workday at the end of every planning period, grading period, and so forth. So in order to come up with calendar A, which is the one that ends in May, we did have to remove numerous teacher work days or holidays from that calendar in order to get to where we wanted to be for that proposal. So with that, we sent on November 4 an email out that you all should have received that had both drafts attached for your review. And we also had a survey along with that so that individuals could identify their preference between the two drafts, but then also provide us feedback or input, suggestions on what we might change or tweak with those drafts. Our goal is to, the 18th of this month is the final day for that. Our goal is to collect that and review it before the committee on November 29th, and then we will potentially make some revisions, submit an updated final draft, maybe with one option in December, just for further feedback and input. Receive that back in January, review it by committee, and have a draft for first review to you all by the February 9 board meeting. So thus far, we've had 242 responses. Hopefully we'll get more because we have about 715 employees. The largest number of respondents have been teachers and instructional assistants. And those individuals in particular have more favorably voted for the calendar that lets us out in May. 64% of the respondents actually preferred that draft. But with that, the nuance to that is they don't like the fact that the holiday break over the winter break that we have has 2 days where we come to school Monday and Tuesday. And that's certainly a division concern also because attendance would probably be significantly impacted in that matter. So, they may throw some suggestions out on how we might get those back and still stay relatively within that end date. And with that, 36% of respondents preferred the counter draft that reflects the framework that's similar to what we're working with now. I'll probably say the higher percentage of those individuals might have been 12-month employees and other individuals that are here in the summertime anyway. But I'll monitor that. They have more time to provide responses. We'll submit that to the committee and continue our work, and we will send that out for feedback one more time before we come up with our final draft to propose to you all. So, do you have any questions about that process or survey? Okay. The third item is just awareness. Wanted to bring to your attention that upcoming we have our elementary and secondary new teacher forums. I talk about these every year. I love this opportunity. This year it will be in person. We have done them virtually at times. But Thursday, December 1st, we will have the elementary new teacher forum. That'll be in the Manelson Middle School library. And that'll be from 4:15 to 5:15 to give everybody opportunity to get there. The secondary will be on Wednesday, December 7th from 3:15 to 4:15. That'll be here in this room. And we provide those questions that we reviewed and updated, among senior staff and among others who have reflected on making sure that we're addressing everything that we wish to get back from our new teachers. They have those sent to them already so they can reflect, write down their answers if they wish, and just kind of helps, create better participation. And we do also start off by letting them know that certainly this is an open forum, and we really want them to share and be honest about the things that are positives for them, but also the challenges that they've faced. And along with the different programs and supports that we do provide, we talked about supporting our teachers earlier. So we discussed the mentor programs. We talked about other supports within the buildings, administrative support, different things that we provide to them for their feedback on how that's going. We talk about the induction process, new teacher orientation, all those different things. So we can get information from them directly on how we might get better. So I always look forward to it. It's usually a good and engaging opportunity, but just be aware of those, and I will share out probably, if I have data to share out in the December board meeting pulled together, I'll certainly give you what I have at that point, and if not, in January, we'll reflect more fully on those results. So, and that's all I have this evening. So if there are questions, or we'll pass it over to Mr. Neighbors.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I thought I'd try out the Human Resources section tonight and see how that felt. I wanted to make the board aware that due to a very recent and significant influx of students with particular needs at Amelon Elementary, we are looking to add an additional teacher in the adaptive curriculum program there. So currently we have two, one that teaches K through 2, another that teaches 3 through 5, introducing a third teacher into that program. So over the last 2.5 weeks, it could be as many as 8 students have either come to us through transfer or been identified through our eligibility process that require services through the adaptive curriculum. That's a significant number. It's essentially an entire class full of students that have come to us over the last 2 weeks. So we're moving forward with that. We've actually had staff in place at Amelon that is licensed to that effect. So we've kind of been seeing this as a possibility for some time. We didn't expect it to be this sudden or this significant. So we do have staff that's able to fill that role, but we are needing to create an additional position to be able to fill the role that person's currently in, serving our students in the general curriculum. So that is a position we'll be moving forward with. We have identified a funding source for that out of our 611 grant, the grant that I get, work with our special education students, but wanted to make sure the board was aware, A, that we had that influx of students, but also that we need to impact staffing as a result of that. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Madam Chair? Thank you, Mr. Neighbors.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the ages of these students?
So they're actually primarily K1 and 2 students. It's much younger students that we're seeing come in. Yep.
So is that like 3, 4-year-olds or?
No, all 5 through 7.
Okay,
That's what we're
thank
seeing at
you.
this point. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you very
Mhm.
much.
We're down to, you have something, Dr.?
Well, I'm just going to add to student reps because I had to make a little comment that Fatima Grace is not here tonight, but she did record a video, and because she wanted to share some information with you. She's actually at the football game tonight, and by the way, we're winning 20-7 right now in the second quarter.
All right.
So she's actually there cheering, but she did record this video today. So please, if you can get it shared, and then I'll give it to Evan.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. First, I want to start by apologizing for not being able to be there in person tonight. We are currently on our way to our first playoff game of the season in Orange County. But a few things I wanted to touch on that are taking place here at the high school are first, the show-up days and field days at the elementary schools. Football players, cheerleaders, and National Honor Society members have had the opportunity to go to some of the elementary schools and volunteer and just spend the day with them. And I think that was a great opportunity. All of the students were super excited. We were super excited. Some of them even asked for our autographs, wanted to take pictures with us. and we're like, this was the best day they had ever had at school. So I just want to thank you guys for putting that on for us. And I know we had fun. I know they had fun. So I just think that was a really great day. And then also I wanted to talk on senior SGA. I'm senior class secretary, but myself as well as the other officers and Ms. Holmes have all been constantly working together to try and come up with new activities and events to keep our classmates involved and just eager to come to school every day. One of the first ones that we've put on that's new this year was this trunk or treat. I think that was very successful. We had people coming back like asking us to promise that this would be an annual event, and all of the candy was gone by the end of it. All the kids came, and it was just like the seniors were involved because we were all able to decorate our cars, and even lower classmen had the opportunity to be involved as well. So I just think that was a great thing and something that hopefully they will carry on each year. Another thing that we put on that was new, that was very successful this year, was the Powder Puff game. We had members of the community coming out. The stand was almost full. It was super fun for us to just get to play football for the night and kind of reverse roles. Upperclassmen won, so that was really great. And then we have new things that we're constantly coming up with, especially for the holiday season. So that's been a really good thing. And then I also wanted to touch on the Future Center. They are constantly just coming up with new colleges to present to us and new opportunities for, even if that may or may not be college for some individuals. We're constantly having new information sessions, even now field trips. We had the on-site admissions day where students got to go into the Future Center and meet with college reps and find out right then and there if they were admitted to the college. So they're just constantly trying to prepare things for us, and that's just been a really great opportunity for everyone. I also wanted to thank the SROs and you guys for putting this in place. I just think that it's been a great safety measure. It honestly does feel safer in the school, and I just appreciate them always being there and helping protect us. So thank you, and thank them for being there. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was homecoming. That was a very successful event. Everyone was just, I think, excited to have a school dance finally again, just with COVID and everything. And I was very honored to be able to represent my senior class as homecoming queen. And like I said, I think just having a school dance again and being able to feel like a breath of fresh air was really nice. So thank you to everyone who helped put that on as well. And yeah, thank you guys for your time. And again, I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person. But yeah.
Very nice.
I can add to that.
Yeah, follow that one up now.
Is it on? Again, I don't know if there's much I can add to that, but a few things I would like to mention is more about the Future Center. I believe during Virginia College Application Week, 75 people on the senior class applied to college, and 24 got accepted within the same week. Place is doing great. I'd like to thank Mrs. Wallen for the great help she's given me and many other people. She's reading my college essay, by the way. And yeah, it's a pretty good time. Last home game was last week, and now we're going off to playoffs. It's getting a little bit colder. And yeah, everything seems to be going good. There was homecoming, there was the trunk or treat, there was a lot. And track started up for me and a lot of other people, and everything's going pretty good.
Thank you, Evan. I still love that radio voice. All right, Dr. Wells.
The one night I did my notes on the computer, I can't sit here and read it because of the technological issues, so give me 1 second. All right, so I'm gonna sit back here. I made it like 200% so I can actually see it. I wanted to talk first about the legislators' visit, and we've picked November 29th, and we're gonna do it at the high school. We're gonna do a lunch brunch type thing. That's the goal, starting from 9 o'clock till we get done. We said 9 to 12, but if it takes that long, it may not take that long, but we're kind of blocking off 9 to 12. We've reached out to Ronnie Campbell. He said he can be here. Mark Peake said he had a prior engagement, so he's initially declined, but we're going to send him an invitation anyway, so hopefully he'll be here. We've also reached out to Congressman Good's office and waiting to hear back from him. They're supposed to let us know something in the next couple of days, we hope. And then we've talked with the mayor, we're reaching out to the town council, reaching out to the board of supervisors, and we've reached out to Jeremy Bryant, who's now the acting with the county, and he said he could be there. So we're hoping to have our local county and town folks, as well as our state delegation and maybe someone from the congressional delegation as well. Our goal would be to have them there, tour the facility there, the CTE facilities we offer, discuss the construction, and then look at some of the JLARC report that was just released this week. You may or may not have seen it, but it talks about teacher shortages and where we are there. And I was going to give you more on that next month, but hit the JLARC report and some other teacher report and some funding issues we're facing, especially SOQ funded positions for us. And the fact that, only 400 of our positions are funded by the state, the other 330 we have to have local funding for, and the state has a very good surplus right now. So we're hoping we can maybe have some conversations along those lines. But again, November 29th, we wanted to make sure we could, Ronnie Campbell, some of those could be here before we really pushed it out too hard, but right now we know we have a few that can be here, so we're going to try to do that at the high school and the culinary arts department. There's where we'll meet and then go from there. Any questions on that? Okay. I want to hit Veterans Day. Veterans Day is tomorrow. And so to all our veterans out there, thank you for your service. I can't lean forward because my microphone will mess up. So I also want to hit that some of our schools are also conducting Veterans Day celebrations and ceremonies tomorrow. Amherst Middle has theirs. I know Ameline has one. I went to Eland today and spoke to their second graders there and had a good time with them. I have some nice interactions with them. So a lot of our schools are doing things. So if you can get out to a school tomorrow, it'd be great. But also tomorrow we're having a red, white, and blue day. We're encouraging all of our students and staff to wear patriotic colors to school in honor of Veterans Day and our veterans. We've held our Superintendent's Advisory Council. So we had our second meeting of this council. And based on feedback from the council and feedback from staff, we've been focusing on lesson plan development. And our goal is, right now, we do not have a standard, so to speak, across the division of what should be in your lesson plans. Manalasan may have one set of standards, the high school may have one set of standards, the elementary school may have a set of standards. But we're not speaking the same language across the division. So our goal is to get to the point where we're speaking the same language and using the same verbiage across the division. Everybody you ask knows what should be in a lesson plan. If you go to a school, they all say the same things, but we need to get some type of general verbiage. So that the Superintendent's Council is working on with that verbiage, and we'll take it back to the schools, talk to the principals, they'll bring it back to us, we'll revise that a little bit and go there. But we also, I've been talking to our teachers the past three weeks or so, and we don't necessarily need a division level template to use, but we are going to develop different templates that people could choose to use if they so desired, but not have a set standard that you have to have it done this way. But there will be certain things that we are saying as a division we expect we should see in a lesson plan, and we'll move that forward. So that's kind of what the focus of that committee is right now. Mental health team committee, the mental health team has reconvened for this year, and they were given some homework at our meeting in October. We meet again next week, I believe. We have a meeting next week, and so we're meeting then. They'll bring the homework back, and they're going to be developing a list of needs and priorities, and we'll move that forward too as we go forward with the mental health discussions for our staff as well as for our students. Next week is American Education Week. So we recognize our educators there. And part of that, we have a pen. I think y'all all should have one at your place. That's what all the staff are getting. It's a really nice pen. It writes really well. I really like it. So the staff will get that. And then also in honor of you, we also have the pictures that we took with our administrators earlier this year. So our principals will get that Monday at our principals meeting, but we wanted to give you all a copy of that tonight. Questions so far? Keep going? All right, I'll keep rolling. Statement of economic interest. You should have a copy of that at your place. You cannot date it before January 1st. You can start filling it out, but you can't date it before January 1st, and it has to be turned in by February 1st. Just a reminder on that. VAST conference, I attended the VAST conference October 30th, 31st, and 1st. On Sunday, we had a new superintendent's meeting orientation, which was some good background information. Had a very nice dinner that evening. Monday, Governor Youngkin spoke. Superintendent of Instruction Bellow spoke, and Secretary of Education Cadera spoke at the conference. One thing you're going to hear from them, for those of us going to the VSBA conference, you'll hear that, but also I think you're going to start hearing this from the state, is there's a desire to change or raise the cut scores in SOL testing this year before the spring. The only problem with that is schools that are on a 4x4 block. Those students will take their test in December, and then they'll take another test. So if they take algebra first semester, they may take that algebra test in December, but then other students who may take algebra second semester would take it in May, but have different standards of which they're being scored by. So the state may need to have some conversations there. There's also an attempt or a desire to raise the accreditation standards. So what they were basically saying was you can expect schools across the state to not be accredited next year because they plan on raising the accreditation standards, which means less schools will be accredited based off of where they're going. That's basically what they said. So we'll find out what all comes to fruition on that. There'll be more coming down the pipe on that, I think, but just give you a heads up on that. Tuesday, Dr. Constantino spoke, Steve Constantino spoke, and he was really talking about engaging disaffected public education families. That was a topic. So I got a lot of good insight from that on how do we re-engage with our community, continuing our move. My goal, and it really fit into what I've been trying to do, is get our community re-engaged. That was a very good conversation there. Again, more to come on standards and accreditation. I don't know. I'll be quiet for that. Okay, Hanover survey. We developed a survey through Hanover Research, and it's been pushed out. It was pushed out to families and staff. We had 494 responses, and so right now Hanover's going through it. But we developed this because part of my goal was to get an idea of how the community and the staff felt about where we are and the job they expected out of the superintendent. So a lot of that is focused on me, not so much on the division, but the state of the division, but more how I can support the school system, how I can support the community to help guide me in my planning as we move into the second semester and through the year. I did want to talk about NAEP. And you've heard a lot of things about NAEP at the state level. Okay, we only had one school take the NAEP test, and we had 40 students that were selected to take the NAEP test. I get no feedback about the NAEP test. I have no idea how our students did on the NAEP test. So I cannot sit here and comment on what are we going to do regarding the NAEP test, because I don't know how our students scored, because I don't get that. Okay? There were roughly 20,000 students in the nation that took the NAEP test. And so we're using that NAEP, the state wants to use the NAEP to really look at how we're doing across the nation, which we did score less. I can agree to that. But to use that as the test, as the catch-all, kind of worries me, because you really don't get a good sense of where Amherst County students are, because NAEP decides what schools, some school divisions in the state didn't even take the NAEP test because they weren't selected by NAEP to take it. We had one school chosen this year. So to use that as a saying that we're not doing what we need to be doing, I think is an injustice, because it only hits a very small 40 of 4,000 students. Does that give me a very good, it's not a very good amount of students, not very good baseline there. And only fourth graders and eighth graders take it. None of your high school students take it. Nobody. It's only select fourth graders and select eighth graders. And they tell us we're going to choose this year. They could say we want Amherst Middle School to take it, and they would take, okay, I want the eighth graders in Amherst Middle to take it. And then if they're there that day, half of them take some are get selected for reading, some are selected for math. It's not really in it, but I get no feedback. I get no data from that. Okay, so you just need to be aware of that. So if people start talking NAEP, We don't get feedback from it. I can't use that to judge how we're doing as a school division because I don't get that. It just compares states. It's at the state level. So I want you to know that background of it. So when people start having that conversation, you at least know a little bit more about how NAEP works. Okay? Not every student in Amherst County took the NAEP. Okay? So just need to be aware of that. Other news, School Psychology Week was this week. It was November 7th through the 11th. We have 3 school psychologists, Martha Anderson, Shannon Nabatacola, and Jeff Williams, and they do a great job for us. So I want to recognize them. And I'm sorry. I should just pull the table back. That's good. All right. So quarterly reviews. We're doing quarterly reviews with our administrators, our principals, and there's 3 areas I'm going to look at. One is behavior, one is academic, and one is teacher observations. On the behavior front, they're going to come in and brief me on what behaviors are seen, what kind of discipline are they seeing, how are students doing in schools, and kind of give me from students that are meeting tier 3 or at that level, they're going to give me a by name list of what they're doing and what interventions they're putting in place for those students. We're going to look at academics, again, look at where we are academically, and kind of look at where we are first 9 weeks data, and what students are doing really well, what students are we concerned about, the DEF list and so forth, and identify those students by name and what interventions are they putting in place to identify, now they've been identified, what are we doing to give those students the needed resources to improve where they are. And then we're also going to look at teacher observations. And then teacher observation front, how many have they done, who have they observed, who are the standouts, who might be some people that need additional supports, so we can get the instructional office to go in and provide additional supports to those teachers who may need the supports to be more effective. So that's kind of the big picture, 30,000 foot view of those. Starting those in I think November 30th, right after Thanksgiving breaks, when we start them. We'll do them all in about a week time frame, so every school administrator will come in and brief my team here, and then we'll go through that with them. So that gives us more feedback on what they're and how they're doing, and makes them have to look at their data a little bit and really put some things in place for their students. Any questions there before I get to my last talking point? Okay. The last thing I have is faculty meetings, and do we have, you just gonna push it through, Brittany? Okay. So I might stand up for this one. No, I can't because this thing. I'll go to the podium. So what I've been doing is the past 3 weeks I've gone to all the schools, and I hit my last school this morning. I went to Amelon this morning, and we talked about instructional expectations and supports. So I know earlier in the year there are a lot of people saying I'm not sure about the lesson plan aspect of it. I'm not sure what you're expecting of me. I'm not sure what we need to do and what can we do there. So we did it. We prepared. Dr. Norman's team helped me prepare a little slideshow, a little PowerPoint here, and we hit. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew where we were. Again, prior to the pandemic, all of our schools were fully accredited. We know that. March of 2020, we know what happened. We know we were shut down. Students were sent home. Teachers were sent home. We did the best we could given what we had, but we really couldn't do a whole lot from March of 2020 into the summer. 2021, we were very limited. We could only have about 6 or 8 kids in a classroom because we had the spacing regulations. We only could put half the kids on a given bus. So on any given day at the high school, you had students come in either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. At the elementary school level, you had them in school Monday through Thursday, but half of that day was direct instruction with teachers. The other half of that day was indirect instruction in the gym or auditorium given virtual learning. During that same time frame, we had 1,800 students receiving remote instruction or virtual instruction at home who opted for the virtual option. 21-22, in June of that summer, I felt really good because I briefed y'all, said, hey, COVID numbers are down, we're ready to get back to school. July, we had new teacher orientation, was in July, and this thing called Delta started popping up. And right when school started, it hit Amherst County pretty hard. We made it to school for about a week and a half. We had to shut down for a week, 2 weeks, and test everybody, bring them back to school and all that. So that hit us in January through March of this past year. We kept school open. I briefed you every month on that. But I cannot say that we had quality instruction taking place because any given day we had a third of our students out or a third of our teachers out, and they just weren't getting the instruction they needed based off of that because they weren't in school because of our staff and our illness rates we had. Other things to consider are during 21-22 school year, we had 13,751 hours of substitute teacher time. A lot of that was due to the pandemic and teachers being quarantined or just illness in general. That does not include the use of virtual days. That does not include teacher coverage. That does not include contracted subs. That does not include when that team right there went into schools and taught classes and covered for administrators. That's just straight substitute teacher time. We had students have to do state and local assessments. We have, 31 hours. We lost roughly 31 hours of instructional time based on substitutes. Another 10 for assessments, another 15 for teacher coverage. So you look at last year, we probably lost about 11 days of instruction based off of that. We also talked with staff about the importance of their classrooms. And this is something I think is important to remember. We nickel and dime ourselves to death. If you go to McDonald's and you buy that cheeseburger for $8 every day, you just think it's just $8, but by the month, if you go every day, it's $240 you're spending on those cheeseburgers. Same thing happens in the classroom. If we use 5 minutes to begin the class, getting started and not really doing much instruction, and 5 minutes at the end of the class, wrapping up and letting kids pack up early and not doing much instruction, then we're losing 36 class periods a year. So I really wanted to illustrate that with our staff, make sure you understand that once for, every now and then you can, okay, but if it's every day, that adds up to time. So be cognizant of the fact that you need to really take time and be aware and use your time wisely in your class period. Secondary level that hit, sometimes at the elementary level it's recess. 5 extra minutes at recess, no big deal one day, but if it's every day, it adds up, okay? Then we hit lesson plans. So when I was at the high school, we had the same conversation in 2015 when I was principal at the high school. We're talking about what should be in the lesson plan. So at the high school, I brought my faculty together, we sat down, butcher block papered it up, and came up with the components of a lesson plan. And that's the memo I sent my high school staff in 2015. The components we came up with, though, were pretty much the components that we should be in lesson plans in general. A date, a class period, a subject, a goal or an objective, an SOL or a competency, and activities or tasks to include introduction, anticipatory sit, modes of instruction, and a closure activity. Those are all things that should be in a lesson plan. So what I'm telling teachers is that's the stuff we have to have. I'm trying to explain to them, we don't need a 50-page lesson plan. I don't want them spending more time writing lesson plans than teaching. Okay, you need to know where you're going and what you're going to do, but we don't need it to be something, we don't need a dissertation for a lesson plan every day, but we need to know these things. They have to be able to address these things when they talk. So I've been trying to get teachers to realize that maybe we can answer some of those questions. And now with the committee, for what we're doing with my superintendent's advisory committee, we're taking some of these things and just kind of fine-tuning that as to what should be in that lesson plan. So as a division, we have a vision of what that should be, an expectation of what that should be. And then we also made sure they understood that I know they have a lot to do, but I wanted them to see what our administrators and what we have to do regarding school improvement, and that is all of this stuff that's written here that we have to do on a daily basis and our principals have to do. So it's not just something that we're asking teachers to do, but we know that our principals, that's what they have to do in order for the school improvement process too. So there's a lot to it. It's not just one or two things. There's a lot going on here with this that we need to do. Then we also want to talk to them about what we can do for them. Professional development, if they need it, if they say there's a need, if we identify a need, we're going to push professional development in. We're going to make sure they have PLC time to actually talk about their data and their instructional planning. And then time at the end, teachers said, I just don't have time to get this done. If they come to their principal and say, I need an hour or two or a half a day to work on planning, then if that principal approves it, we're approving it, and we're making sure they have coverage in school. We're trying to give unencumbered teacher work days. So if it's a teacher work day or planning day, we're not taking that day up by us going into schools and telling them you have to be in these meetings or this meetings. We're giving them time to plan, and also to get into planning work sessions. And then I think that was, then they had a chance to ask me questions. And not many asked questions for some reason. I don't know why they didn't want to ask me a lot of questions. But we gave them a question section. And then I also talked to them about their own personal well-being and the fact that they need to take care of themselves and focus on their own mental health and their mental well-being by finding something that's positive they can do to relieve their stress. We talk about the different types of stress, and we don't need to be into the distress area. When they start getting to that point, we got to find something they can do. And they need to really reflect on themselves for that. I can't tell them what works for them. I can tell them what works for me, but they have their own things, their own stress releasers. But we spent a few minutes talking about that. And then I want to close with this, and this kind of talks about our why. And when we look at, sometimes we get to a point where we can't see past right here because our focus on, we just can't see it. We can't get past the immediate to see down the road. And sometimes as people in this profession, we kind of forget why we do what we do. So I played this little video, and I'd like y'all to watch this, about 4 minutes, as to our why. And let's see if it'll work. All right. So I think it's important that we realize and we remind everybody that we all have our Douglases and why we do what we do in this profession. And it's not about all those intangible things, but it's the kids. And we do this for the kids. And it's important for us to remember that when we get sidetracked on everything else that's going on in life and in the world, that we take a step back and remember that we're in it for the kids, and that's why we do what we do. And so when we get focused on this other stuff, and we can't see past here, again, the kids are why we do it. So I left all us teachers with that, and I'll answer any questions y'all have. So if I hear none, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Thompson. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Very nice presentation, and I think the video that you showed at the end really does say all. It's why we're here. Okay, board members, we are down to your committee reports and your individual comments. Mr. Terry, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So I have no committee report. We don't meet until next week. So the STEM does not have a committee. But as far as tonight's presentations, the Show Up Amherst thing it's a really neat concept. I think everybody has gotten a lot out of it. I hope that students have gotten as much out of it as the teachers and parents have. It's good to see people doing things together again and being part of the community and the community being part of the schools. So Mr. Cox also, thanks for the bus, for our bus drivers. They are the first people to meet most of our students. They see them every morning, see them in the afternoons. They do a great job. I know they're stretched pretty thin, but they do a great job at doing what they do. So just keep up the good work. And thanks for all the, all the different projects and things you guys have presented tonight. It's always a lot, and you guys do a great job. Really look forward to all the projects we got coming up at the high school, all the things there. And I'd like to give a shout out to our veterans. I know we have several here in the room tonight. Thank you for your services. We wouldn't be here doing what we're doing if it wasn't for you. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, that's about it for me. So like I said, thanks to everybody for all that you've done. Okay.
Mr. Terry. Mrs. Licken.
Yes, well, I'm going to ditto Mr. Terry because so much good information tonight from so many people and so much hard work. It doesn't go unnoticed. We may not call everybody by name, but, just trying to fill these vacancies and trying to keep everybody happy and the buses rolling and the food cooking and grades going out. It's just a lot of work, so I just say kudos to everybody. I've enjoyed myself with the Show Up Amherst, and I got to 2 of the tailgate parties. The other 2, it takes so long for my grandchildren to get in the car and so forth, so I'm not gonna make no excuses. But by the time we got everybody loaded up, it was game time. But we've enjoyed all of the things that have gone on so far, and Dr. Wells, we thank you and your staff for all your work that you're doing. I'm not sure I agree with what's coming up about raising the cut scores. I'm pretty sure I don't like that. I'm not too excited about the accreditation standards, the bar being raised. I understand somewhat of the concept, but I'm just saying it's a lot to fathom. I'm sure we'll get more information as we go down the road on that. But it's just a lot going on. As far as that was my personal stuff. As far as committee report, I did attend the delegate assembly today and virtually, and it lasted from 12 to 3. I did at the request of the board chair. I voted no and abstained from some just because the board did not get back to me about what they really wanted to do. And most of these legislative positions are already in place. And that's why they all were adopted today. What it was is Fairfax County made a few adjustments in some wordings and a few temporary things that they wanted to add for discussion. And what happens in the spring, if we attend the Southern Regional meeting, these positions are talked about, and our board or any other board can bring up what they want to put in there. And then again, throughout the year prior to today, these legislative positions are out there for us to look at. What I did, and I take responsibility, it may not have been, I thought I had another week. We usually do it next week before we go to Williamsburg, and it wasn't anything underhanded or no transparency. It was just a date that I looked over. So I sent it out to everybody and said, hey, look at it and see what you want me to say on your behalf. And Mr. Terry, I appreciate what you sent me. And then the chair spoke to everybody else. So what happened today is and you can take it home with you, the block vote, they voted in a block for 189. Everything else they pulled out. And discussions were on it. Similar discussions, for instance, about the school buses being electric. Some counties, some school boards see that as an expense that they can't afford. But they added some language, not just electric and diesel, but also propane. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm learning a little bit about that. So it was adopted anyhow, because the more we can get money from the state or from these grants to assist us in getting these electric buses, the better. And that's all it was. Fairfax was saying, hey, can we put another something there to get some more money? Another example was, in fact, Dr. Wells said something about it tonight, the shortage of bus drivers in the state, and everybody's talking about that. And they said, well, what do we want to do about that? And so they were just making a suggestion and let the state help us with something to do with how we can do something better. And there was a man from another county, Florida perhaps, I can't remember, who said that, yes, getting 18-year-olds to drive buses is what he used to do. And he had to go to school anyway, so he might as well have drove the bus with everybody on it. I thought that was interesting. These things sound easy, but I don't know, in reality, how the 18-year-old might go to McDonald's and Walmart and everywhere before he takes the kids to school. So we just have to, that might not be in my lifetime. So, but I'm just saying these things were brought up. And that's what this discussion was. It was nothing on there of those 11 positions or 12 positions that I thought that Amherst would not want to be involved with. And I felt comfortable as on behalf of you voting for those. For 23 years, I've been to Williamsburg and voted on behalf of Amherst, and I've never in my life had to say no or abstain. But with my negligence on the date and not being able to bring this to you, I accept that responsibility. However, they were all adopted, and it will be out there for you to review. And once again, I probably will not serve in this role again. So I will pass that on to you, Ms. Chair, that I resign from that position. But next week when we go to Williamsburg, you may hear some more about these, but it was nothing out of line. I felt good about everything that was adopted. So that's my report. It's all good.
Ms. Legan, and I thank you for serving in that capacity very much. Thank you for representing us. Mr. Greiser?
Again, thank you all for the information that you've presented this evening. Glad we got to honor Mr. Fitzgerald, his service, the school board, and his contributions to this county. Looking forward to participating in Amelon's Veterans Day ceremony tomorrow. I've sung the Star Spangled Banner about 24 times this week, helping my son, because I think the 3rd through 5th grader are going to be doing that part of the ceremony. So looking forward to that, and all the events that are going on tomorrow in the school system's very encouraging. I hope the weather will cooperate with us. So, but other than that, the Gov School did not meet in November. We didn't have enough things to put on the agenda, so Dr. Smith just decided to push anything over to December, so we'll meet in the first part of December, and I'll have a report at our December meeting. But other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Justice?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. So much information, so many decisions that impact our kids. And I am struck again that we're not going to get it perfect, but reaching out that hand to that kid or that teacher is making all the difference. And so I find comfort in that. Everyone has said many positive things, so I don't need to reiterate them. Lots of great things going on. I think one of the things I really appreciated, Dr. Wells, was your presentation on the lesson plans, because we're hearing a lot about lesson plans. And so I really appreciated the Keep It Simple Smarty attempt to help those teachers be able to make the most of their time to meet the need, but not have to take away from their instructional time as much as possible. To use it as a tool to serve them, not for them to serve the tool. Policy, I wanted to suggest to the board or Madam Chair that maybe next meeting that possibly we could discuss policy KLB, which is our challenge. It's our policy about challenged reconsideration of learning materials. That possibly we could amend it to add that when sexually explicit materials are being reviewed, if they could be withdrawn from the shelves just until the committee makes a decision. And so I was wondering if we could maybe include that in our next meeting. As the board and division are in the process of determining the appropriate handling of sexually explicit materials in our schools, as parents, there are things that you can be doing. Our school is very supportive of wanting to honor parents' involvement in their kids and what they are taking home with them or checking them out. So if you, as a parent, have some concerns about what's in the library, you can reach out to your principal and you can tell them, I'm concerned about this book and this book. And they can make a note to your student's library account. So you can have confidence that your student is not accessing a book you're not comfortable with. So that is something you can do in the meantime. And I just want to say, do not weary of doing good, for in due season there will be a harvest. And just take things one day at a time, all of us, as we're trying our best to serve our community and take care of these kids that are our future.
Mr. Rossi.
Yeah, tonight I look back over all the meetings since I started on the board, and with our new superintendent, every time I sit down in a meeting, I know that we as a board made the right decision. Dr. Wells, you've done a phenomenal job, and you keep moving things forward. The Show Up Amherst initiative, and everything is moving forward. And it's amazing to see how you've rallied the troops together and put what you said into action and executing that. And I know, you have a lot of support. Your team is great, and I think you're doing a job that warrants good recognition, as well as the rest of the people that are here with you tonight, your administrators. Sometimes, we recognize top management, and I know you guys do notice the bus drivers, the custodians, the person that's running errands, and it's a team effort, and I'm proud to be part of this board here at Amherst County at this specific time. We have struggles, and I know there's a lot of concern about raising the bar. A lot of you don't know this. My brother was actually a school administrator up in upstate New York, and he was really worried, and this is a long time ago, that the bar was being lowered. He was worried what it was going to do to the country, and it unfortunately started to come true. And I don't think raising the bar is a bad thing. The challenge we'll come up to the challenge, and that's what we have to do. The problem is the bar was lowered enough to where we weren't challenged enough. We need to be constantly challenged. We feel the struggle, we don't take the challenge head on. And I think by raising the bar, we're gonna come up with new ways to reach it. And striving for perfection, it's a moving target. And if we don't challenge ourselves, and I think we can do that in Amherst County, I think we can move forward. And I think our students, our teachers, our parents, our community is gonna make sure that we achieve the highest awards. And you're turning it around, Dr. Wells, or Dr. Wells, you're turning it around and moving it forward, and I appreciate you for that, you know, and your team it's a pleasure to be here. All the hard work that goes into it, it's really incredible, and I'm proud to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. I'd also like to just say thank you to all the veterans that have served our country. I just want you to know that we appreciate you and recognize what you've done for us. And look forward to that recognition tomorrow in our schools. Also, Mr. Fitzgerald, his family that came, and the honor that, or the resolution that we bestowed on him, the information about him I thought was very unique and very worthy of his honor about his contributions to our schools, our community, and the importance of making a difference when it really matters. I continue to be impressed with the partnership between Amherst Foundation, Iron Lives Matters, and Amherst County Public Schools, and I just still want to thank GLAD for their assistance, financial assistance with #ShowUpAmherst. The energy from that and just the communication of responsibility, citizenship, and community is so important for all of us as adults and students. And once again, every time Mr. Cox comes to the podium, he always is so elaborate and says things so much better than I do. And he was thankful that we saw the bus drivers as part of our family. I just want to say to everybody who is on our staff that you are a part of our family, and we appreciate everything that you're doing and all that you give for our students. That goes for everybody. I also am thankful for the safety grant that we are receiving, and I want to say that Fatima's words in her video, she said she was appreciative of the SROs, which the safety grant will help, but I heard her say that the students feel safe in our schools. That was such a wonderful thing to hear. I know that you have been working hard on that this year, and to hear a student say that made me feel good. I also really appreciated both Evans and Fatima's comments about the college center. What do we call it? It's not the college center.
Future Center.
Future Center, thank you. I know we've had that for a while, and I thank Dr. Brown for bringing that to our students, and it sounds like it is a continuation of something that is really being good for our students. 75 applications and 40 accepted within 1 week. I thought that was amazing, and I don't care. Those college applications and the process is daunting, and having assistance with that and encouragement in that is just phenomenal. I also want to thank Mrs. Legan for representing us with our legislative positions. I know that when the VSBA adopts these positions, that they are things that they're going to go to Richmond and lobby for. And I just want to encourage our board members that when we meet with our legislators on November 29th for our breakfast or brunch, that is the beginning of when we can lobby. And I know that Dr. Wells, you said we're going to be talking about SOQ-funded positions. And so one of the things that I felt when I looked at the current VSBA positions is not that any of them were bad, but it was a lot of money. And I didn't see very much that addressed the learning loss of our students. And I really want to make sure that this year this board is on the front end of having a voice. So when a year from now we have some legislative positions that really are addressing some of our needs of our students and that learning loss. And while I do appreciate the positions, I did wish that we had had time to discuss those as a board. But Ms. Legan, you did as we asked, and I appreciate that very much. I also have been enjoying the tailgating and just the community that that's been providing. And as I close, I want to say that it is a very difficult task that's in front of everybody, but I am just amazed at the energy and the level of professionalism and expertise that you are approaching it, big picture-wise as well as the details. There's no stone that's left unturned. And I just want to, as Dr. Wells has said, to remember to keep the main thing, that good quality instructional expectations and supports. That is one of the things that we need to remember. And it does get heavy to carry, but we're doing it for all of our students, every single one of them. And I just thank you, Dr. Wells, for your work and your, just the personal touch that you put to that, and talking with our faculty and staff, because it is a heavy task for them. But I have confidence in them. I know that they will do it. And it's going to take time, but we will get there. And the last thing being the month of Thanksgiving, Fatima also said that having the homecoming dance was back to normal, and it felt so good. And I'm so thankful for that every time I hear back to normal. But I just want you to know that I do not take back to normal for granted. It is something that I am appreciating every day, and we need to remember that it is not guaranteed to us tomorrow. So for that, I am thankful. So anything else from board?
Motion adjourn.
All right, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mrs. Justice. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I'm